So lately I've had people interested in an update on our fig orchard. Now that it's been several months since we originally planted all those figs, I think it's time to get out there and show you what's going on, show you how things are growing, and I want to talk about a few things throughout this video, including, are these things deer resistant or deer proof? How much I've had to water them since they've been planted in the ground, and how I feel about the spacing that I chose on these things now that we're several months out. So one thing that I've learned over the last few years about figs, like these guys behind me here, are that they need a tremendous amount of water. And if you'll notice, these figs that I've got in pots don't look that magnificent compared to some of you guys in your pictures on Facebook. And I think the reason is, I didn't care for them as well as they needed to be cared for in the very beginning. They need a lot of water. They need a constant supply of water. And when you don't offer that to them, the leaves start drooping. And what I found from them versus other plants are, they don't recover from that very well at all. Those leaves stay drooped. They just send up new growth and you get a new fresh start. But once they get zapped by that heat and those pots dry out, they don't recover well. So we'll head in here in the hoop house in a second. I'll show you something before we go out to the orchard. But these are the last few in pots outside of the hoop house that I haven't planted out yet. And you can see I put some watering pots underneath them to keep them constantly supplied with moisture, and they're actually recovering. The first year I had all these cuttings, they fruited for me. The second year, not all of them fruited, maybe one or two, and then the third year, they didn't fruit at all. And it's because I wasn't watering them enough. I've just got so many plants I wasn't caring for them. But since putting them in these water pots here, or these little self-waterers, they've got a constant supply of moisture, and they're actually starting to produce figs again. They're starting to perform for me. All of them have little figs. They don't look the best, but I've got some theories on that. And those theories are, they need constant water and a good supply of fertilizer through the growing season. And you can see everything in the hoop house here behind me. I've changed it up a little bit versus those potted ones just to prove this out. So these are varieties I haven't gotten planted out in the orchard yet, and some of them are newer varieties. And you can see we've got figs on lots of them and tons of beautiful green growth. The leaves are doing great and everything looks fabulous in here, and it's because the ones that I hadn't potted out that I had here, I potted up into bigger pots, I fertilized them well, and I've been watering these things almost daily. Now the varieties that are new, I potted up into big pots as well, and they've just continued to flourish, like this one right here, this Regado del Salento. Look at that beauty. Got figs growing on it already. It's recovering and doing really well after arriving in the mail. I've had this for about a month now, and you can see how nice this little tree looks. What a beautiful little tree. This Galicia Negra right here. This one actually put on a ton of massive growth. And somebody I saw posted a comment on What the Fig on the Facebook group about getting a package in the mail that had arrived with the tops of it white. They just looked bleached out because they'd been in the mail too long, they got lost. That happened to this one. The top of this one that arrived to me was bleached out white right here. But after fertilizing, watering, potting it up to a big pot, look at the growth on this. It's done this all on its own over the last month or so. Beautiful plant and turning into one of my strongest growers. I'm really excited to see the fruit on that Galicia Negra. And then we've got, you know, figs on a lot of these different plants. Here was another one I got this year, St. Martin. And it is looking absolutely beautiful. But I owe it to these bigger pots, the fertilizer, and the constant watering. We're going to relate all that to outside when we go out to the orchard and show you what's going on out there. Look at that beauty. Isn't that nice? Bordesot Negra Ramada. I can't wait for that thing to start really performing. Obviously, it looks like a slow grower. It kind of slowed down, isn't doing much, but it's starting to put on some green buds here. We'll see what happens. I know a lot of energy is going into that fig, but I just can't help myself. I might bring that one indoors this winter just to make sure I'm safe. So you guys want to head out to the orchard and see what that looks like? All right, so let's continue our little journey out here to the fig orchard. Now, if you watch those other videos, I think I put this in the last video. I expanded the orchard out to this side, and I've only got 5 figs planted in there, but I had 6 bales of hay, so I put that last bale in there. just to have it ready for another fig. I actually kind of dug up the holes all the way down, but I'm not worried about that. I'll expand and add to that as time goes by. We need to get that pile burnt down out there from the actual clearing job. But if you look over here on this side, look at all these beautiful figs. So yeah, it looks good, man. I just came out and I mowed all this yesterday and weed eated around each of these bale areas, and all the figs are standing prominent and proud. All right, so let's start over on this side of the orchard because there's fewer plants over here. And these plants were actually planted a little bit later than those ones on that side, so they're a little bit behind where they are. But let's go ahead and just talk about each of these guys. So we'll start with the first one here, and I've got all these labeled, and I made a map of all of this so that I know exactly what I've got, and we'll always have backups, plus we'll have the videos here. But this one right here is green ischia, and here's what I'm talking about when I talk about the pots. I had this one in a pot for a long time, and you can see before I planted it, I wasn't watering it as well, and it didn't have a self-watering system at all, and so the leaves started drooping. And what I found about figs is they never recover from that. Those leaves that droop never recover. It's kind of weird because my rhododendrons, when I plant them, and if I don't water, you know, for a few days or a week or something, they start drying out, the leaves droop. But when I water them, they bounce right back up. The figs don't do that. They tell you when there's a problem, and then they maintain that problem until you do something about it. But here's what they do that I've learned. When you do start steadily watering and keeping a constant supply of water and fertilizer to them, the new growth that comes out looks beautiful. And that's what's happening here. You can see right in there, we've got all kinds of beautiful new growth just starting to come out. And these are young. They just got planted not too long ago, but we've got beautiful growth on the top. And that's what we're looking for. Now, the thing that I'm most interested in, I know this first year or two isn't going to be that spectacular with these guys. I just want good, solid root production. My interest is not in the tops. My interest is in good, solid roots that are really going to get established. Let's walk over this way. Over on this side, I planted my Olympian. Now, I debated about whether planting this one should happen or not out here, but just reading that we have, this is such a good climate for this fig in Western Washington Zone 8B. I had to plant it. It's over here on the edge. We'll see what happens. Once again, it was a potted one, a 7-gallon pot for years. Didn't take very good care of it, but you can see this one was planted a little later, but it's starting to recover. It's got those upright leaves starting to come, and it's got a couple little figlets down in there. Not that those matter. I don't care about any of that. I might even come back and cut this thing. I might even come back and cut all of them right there at the base or at the top of the level of the hay there, just so they get new invigorated growth the second and third year. We'll see. Over here we have a sad story. So this is my Coldodon ramata, and when I was mowing this whole pasture trying to get it all ready, I planted all these out, waited for a while, and then forgot exactly where I had it planted, and I accidentally mowed it over. So I came out here with my pruners and I snipped that top off and that, and I've been watering it diligently. You never know, these figs are resilient. I may have lost it completely, but we'll see what happens. I'll give it time, and we'll just see if we've got anything coming out of there in the future. I'm kind of looking right now, and I don't see too much. It may be a goner. I may have to find that one again, but that's okay. Let's go over here. I think this one is, I got my little map here, my Rockaway Green. It is. So there's my Rockaway Green, and when I planted it out, I actually snipped back. These were long branches in that pot, but I snipped them way back because, you know, it was suffering, man. It was in these pots and I couldn't keep enough water to them. Now, since planting it, I snipped them way back, and they didn't have to support as much of a plant. You can see what they're doing. They're starting to put on nice new growth. We're getting later in the summer. It's what, the end of July right now, but that's okay. They're getting established. We've got all kinds of new little buds coming off here, and probably what I'll do is snip a lot of this back, and it'll just flush out next spring. Next spring is what I'm really after and excited about. Here's the last one here in this little group, and this is my Battaglia, and you can see it's doing about the same. We won't spend too much time on that, but it's bouncing back and starting to do well, and there's nothing in that one. Let's head over. This is the side I'm really excited about right now because you guys watched me plant all this on this side, and it was quite a while ago, And these were, once again, these were figs that I had in those pots. You know, I had them in 5-gallon, 7-gallon pots, and I wasn't watering them very well. I was trying, but you know, I got so many plants around here, and these things need like daily water in pots, and I didn't have anything set up for them. So I'm just so impressed by how much these things are bouncing back after getting planted in the ground, and we'll go walk up to each of them individually and talk about them. This is, to start off, is the Violet de Bordeaux. Now, one thing, oh, and when we get to the end of all this, I'm going to tell you something. I'm actually a little bit in disbelief. I was hoping for this, but I'm a little in disbelief. We'll talk about that here in the end, but we'll see if you figure it out before we get to the end. But Violet de Bordeaux. So I've had a couple of these figs since I planted them out. Just kind of lose some branches. I don't know why. The other branches have turned out to be healthy. And once again, since putting these things out in soil, this thing never fruited for me in the pots. And that's the funny thing. People say, well, when they're in the pots, it forces them to fruit because it compresses that root ball into a smaller area, and it thinks it's, you know, got nowhere to go and it needs to fruit or die, and I don't know. Anyway, I never got fruit off this thing in a pot. And now that it's in the ground, look at this. Now we're a little late because, you know, I planted these things late. But in the ground with the fertilizer and constant moisture, they've got figs. Almost every one of these trees has figs all over it for the first time in forever. It's so amazing. But there's the Violet de Bordeaux. This is my Black Madeira KK. And I am excited about this one. Look at this. It fruited for me the first year and never since. This was the one I got directly from Keith. And look at that. Little figs already forming. These things will probably never ripen on this tree this time because I planted them too late. And the figs are coming on too late. And it'll be, you know, it'll be cool here in October. So we're in the end of July right now. I just don't think there's going to be enough time. Who knows? We'll find out. Let's walk on down to the next one. Oh, other thing I want to talk about with this, all these figs, is that, and yeah, you see the hose. I am hand watering all of these, but I enjoy doing it. And when you do that with your plants, it just gets you more in touch with them, and it gets you more, you know, seeing every little thing that's going on with all of them. And I really enjoy that aspect of this. I only, you know, I stand at each one for about 30 seconds and just water, 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 and I look it over real well, and I pull any weeds around it, and then I move on to the next one. It doesn't take that much time, half hour for this whole thing, every other day or so. So the other thing I noticed with this was, since getting these things planted in the ground, you know, the soil, when I start watering and it goes down deep into those pots and goes out into the surrounding soil, even if I don't get to these with water for a week, they still have moisture down in there because those pots dry out so fast. But in the ground, they maintain that moisture. The more I water, the more growth and figs they put on, but I can go longer. They're just, you know, the ground is just a massive buffer. And when you plant trees in the ground, the ground buffers problems. It buffers against insect issues, being outdoors for one. It buffers against pH issues, over fertilizing. The ground is so huge, and so, you know, if you water, it soaks into the soil, and if you forget for a little while, there's still moisture down in there, and that's what I'm loving about this. Let's check out the I-258. Boy, this is going to be a long video. We're going through all these things. Look at this Italian 258, one of my favorite figs, turning out to be one of my favorites. And I'm blown away by this. Now, this one always did good in a pot as well, but it didn't produce this many. I got a fig off of this one year, and I think I made a video about it or took pictures and posted them. But this one is a good performer. It doesn't matter if it's in a pot or in the ground or where it's at, and the figs seem to ripen in this area. It was a really good fig. Now, I don't know if these will ripen. It's a little later, but maybe we'll come back and see. But beautiful fig, doing real well. You can see those leaves on there. Just doing awesome. Let's try to get through these guys. Now, some of you are going to go, Mike, what are you doing, man? But Martin Ancaramata. I know, a lot of you guys are thinking, some of these you shouldn't be planting in the ground, but you know what? You don't know until you try, right? And I don't mind digging these up down the road and putting something else in their place if it doesn't work out. But I enjoy growing these things as much as trying the fruit. So it doesn't really matter to me. I just love all of it. I enjoy the growth of the plant as well as the fruit. Let's move on over to this one. And I do have a backup of that one. I have a backup of a few of these in the hoop house just in case one of them doesn't make it the first winter. We can try again. Strawberry Verte, it's doing real good. Good little figs on there. It's got one big stalk coming up through the center, and it's just kind of floppy. I might trim that one way back here. Violet de Solis, that one's really doing well. There's a few of these plants that just started taking off ever since putting these out here. So this one, I'm really liking how it's turned out. It did not look good in a pot at all. As soon as I planted it out, you can see all that nice, new, beautiful growth. No figs yet, but it's the first year. But beautiful, beautiful plant. It looks so much better than it did when it was in a pot, and I'm excited to see this guy grow on. So there are a few varieties too, guys, I wanted to tell you about that I actually thought about getting rid of and not planting or not even keeping around because they just did so badly in a pot. And this was one of them. It's crazy the difference when I have it in a pot versus in the ground. Now, I know a lot of you guys have potted figs back east, and you have absolutely beautiful figs in pots, but I couldn't keep up with it. I couldn't care for them like you guys do in the pots, but in the ground, it's a whole different story, man. And some of these varieties that I was actually going to get rid of, and I'll show them to you as we go through out here, are turning out to be some of the best varieties I have in the ground, and I am so glad I decided to keep everything that I had and just make this fig orchard expand as far as it had to expand. So let me get to my map here. This one is Noir de Barbantin, or Barbanton. I'm not sure how you pronounce that one, but another one. It wasn't doing good in a pot. It's recovering. It's not massive. Looks to be a slower grower so far. It wasn't in a big pot though to start with. I think it was in a 2-gallon pot, not a 7. And so it was a smaller plant. But you can see lots of nice new growth coming up there. And it's starting to do good. We'll see how it does next year. This one right here, I guess the official name for it is Vasilika mavra. It's a dark Greek fig. But I actually bought this one probably 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I don't know, from Herman. And he raves about this variety, and he actually calls it Vasilika Black. I guess it's the same thing translated over. But this one has always been a good performer for me as well. It roots really easily, it grows well in a pot, and you can see it's really flushing out in the ground. So I'm excited to see what that one does over time, and you can see we got figs. I don't know if I'll get any to ripen this year, but we've got figs over here. This one's a little bit different. This is La Bourgeoisie. I actually bought this one from Keith as well. And it's done this every year in the pot. I don't know if it's going to do it in the ground. Very vigorous grower. And I did a video about this before. Very vigorous grower in the summer and puts on tons of beautiful stalks. Look how far down that goes. Tons of beautiful stalks and green leaves there. And I've got all these different stalks. I'll have plenty of cutting material. But so far, every year that I've had this tree, it's died back almost to the ground. And you can see that was the growth from last year. If I don't take the cuttings, they're lost. At least in my zone 8B, in warmer climates, they might make it. But I'm really curious to see how this one does. Now that it's planted in ground, we'll see if it's going to die back like that. I don't know. You know, the top's still going to get as cold as it ever would, you know, over on the side of the hoop house there. The roots are solid though, and they made it through the winter in pots. I know they'll make it in the ground. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm really curious to see how that goes. But if it's going to die back to the ground every year and it can't make a Brava crop. I don't know if it even does, you know, have a Brava crop on this particular variety, but we'll see. That may be one that we get rid of over time, but I really like it so far. I don't know why, I just do. I have issues. All right, this is my Smith fig, and so far it's doing really good. It's a strong performer. I got a fig several years ago off of it, but now that we've got it in the ground once again, little figs starting to form. I'm waiting for this one to really start taking off and looking good, but doing real well in there right now. You can see it greened up nicely once we got it in the ground. This is a kind of a weird deal. Now, this is my Black Mission, and I planted it because a lady in a town close by said she planted a Black Mission in her front yard, and it's like 30 years old or something. And she said it produces wonderful figs, tons of them, like hundreds of them every year. It's an old fig tree. And this one actually produced a fig for me the first year I had it, like 4 or 5 years ago. And it was a wonderful tasting fig. So, and that was before I had tried any of the other, you know, really kind of nice varieties like the Italian 258. But really good tasting fig, and I thought I want that here at my place. It's doing real good, the branches that are growing, but it's weird. Some of the branches have died back since I planted it in the ground. Not sure why. Kind of weird, but it's got a few little figlets on there. It's doing okay. Like I said, not expecting too much this first year. Now, this one is my Ronde Bordeaux, and it seems to be doing good. Actually, doing good. It's taken off since I put it in the ground. This one was meant for my climate. But look at this thing. Look at this thing. There's a little figlet just starting to grow on there. Look at all this growth. It just started, tons of branches just started shooting off, and we've got figs on all these little branches along here, but doing real good, looking fantastic. I'm glad I planted that one here. And I kind of planted it next to the Violet de Bordeaux because I wanted to compare the two figs. I don't know why, I just wanted to do that. All right, this one is that my JH Adriatic, yes, or Adriatic JH, whichever way you want to say it. So this was a smaller tree, another one. It was only in like a 2-gallon pot. I didn't have it as long, and decided to just plant it out here. So we've got all kinds of growth coming up from that stem down there. Get that. And so what I'm thinking, because this one's kind of growing lanky here, you can see, look at the figs on that guy. And these got planted out kind of late. Imagine if they would have started earlier in the spring. But we've got new growth down there. I think I might come up and just snip that off down here and let that new growth come up stronger next spring. I'm excited about that tree. I think it's going to do well. We'll see what happens. This is one of my favorite leaf patterns on a fig, although this is a small one, and so the leaf pattern isn't as prominent as it is on the full-grown leaves. But this is my Col de Dame Noir, and you can see that it's starting to come out right there. I just think that's so beautiful. It's just intricate, and everything just kind of works together. I've actually got a cutting of this. Actually, I think it was an air layer I took, and it's growing in the hoop house right now. But doing real good out here. It's just trying to get established. I know that's a later variety. All my Col de Dames are planted in a row here, and I know they're all late varieties, but I don't care. I like the plants as much as I like the figs. So this is my Col de Dame Blanc, and it's doing real well. You can see, looks like it wants to start producing a few figs, but once again, it's late. These things will never ripen here. At least these particular figs. I don't know if maybe at some point I'll get them to ripen once this tree gets mature, but time will tell. Stick with me, and we're going to learn a lot. Now, this is interesting. These two are the same named figs, and I did this on purpose. And some of you who have been in the fig world for a long time will know, you've seen the threads online in the different groups, and you know what the issue is here when I mention it. But I wanted to see for myself what would happen. I have planted here two different Col de Dame Gris. And after saying that, a lot of you will already know exactly where I'm going with this. But I thought this would be interesting as the years go by. So this particular one, I spent a ton of time seeking out. And this, I know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, is a true Col de Dame Gris. And it was purchased from, I'm not going to go into names, but it was purchased from a very reliable seller that had the true Col de Dame Gris that's been in the fig hobby for decades and knows what is going on with these things. And so you can see it's slower growing. It wasn't in a big pot. It was in a smaller pot, so it was a smaller tree to start with. Some of these, you know, like I show you, some of these were in 7-gallon pots. This one was probably in a 2-gallon pot, I think, when I planted it out here. Slower growing, not putting on the growth as fast. You can see the leaf pattern on there, no figs yet, but there it is, Col de Dame Gris, the original true one. And I planted it right next to another Col de Dame Gris that was sold to me from Herman. Now, I know, you know, there was this controversy for a long time. I'm not saying which one is right. Herman says that's the true Col de Dame grease. I want to believe the guy. He's been in the business forever. So there it is. He sells it as this wonderful plant. Now this one is, like I said, it was in a 7-gallon pot. It's older, but look at the strong growth on this thing. So anyway, I'm not going to get into the, you know, who's it, what's it kind of thing, or the names or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just going to kind of stand back here and tell you that one is the Col de Dame grease that the fig community, the people who have been around for a long time, fully agree is the true Col de Dame grease, whatever that means. This one is the Col de Dame grease that I bought from Herman. I put them side by side because over the years, as they kind of catch up with each other, or don't, we'll see. I want to compare leaves, I want to compare figs, I want to see how all of this works out in the long run, once and for all, just for the fun of it. So we'll see how that goes. And then this one right here is actually surprised me. So this is more, a little bit more shade, but the sun will be peeking over that tree here shortly. This tree is one of them that in the pot, it wasn't the best growing fig in the pot. And like I said, part of that was my problem. I almost got rid of it. I'm so glad I didn't. Now Steve, a friend over on the other side of the mountains, sent me cuttings of this years ago. This one was growing in a 7-gallon pot. This is Hollier, and it's supposed to do well in my area. And you can see almost every branch is loaded down with massive amounts of figs, and it's such a young tree. It's amazing. Look at this, loaded with figs. Now I haven't tried this one yet, but we're going to find out. And I'm excited about trying this one. It's such a good grower. If it's a good tasting fig and growing this well, man, I might have to duplicate this thing and move it around my property, but I'm really liking this Hollier. All right, we got a long way to go, guys. We're halfway through, or a little over halfway through. So for those of you who are checking out, have a fantastic day, guys. But for the rest of you, let's keep moving right along. Because I know some of you guys want to go through all of these, and that's what this video is all about. This right here, some of you may say, why'd you plant that one, Mike? That's my brown turkey. I don't know, just because I had it and I wanted it, and it's supposed to perform good and be a nice tree. So there's my brown turkey. We won't spend enough time or ton of time on that. That's it is what it is. This right here is one I just picked up this year, and it's a smaller tree, as you can see. In fact, I think a cutting was just rooted this past winter or late winter, and so, you know, I do live in zone 8B, so I'm not so worried. I'm thinking them roots are just getting good and established down in there. This is Cavalier. I'm excited about this one because they say it's got a cherry colored flavor, cherry flavor to it, and it just looked like an outstanding fig. So hopefully this little guy is rooting in real good and doing well. I think the hay on some of these smaller ones will also help to protect from the winter winds when, you know, they go dormant, and, you know, it's kind of built up around them, making a little cocoon in there for them. So we'll see what happens. This one, I'm a little worried about going into winter, but not too much. As time goes by, I'm worrying less and less. This is by Ben's Golden Riverside. Now, I'm getting the shade there for you. There we go. All right, see how little this guy is? And if you remember, this past winter, I did a video on this cutting, and I grew this indoors, and then this part died back and then started growing new growth. And then when I planted it out here in the sun, this started dying back. I thought it was done, and I thought I'm just gonna leave it there and see what happens. So I left it, and here's what it's done. It's put on some new growth. It's setting roots down in there. So we'll see what happens. It does well in this area, and after seeing Ben's video about his Golden Riverside, or Robert's Golden Rainbow, whatever you want to call it, they're all the same. After seeing that video, I just know it'll perform well here in my area because I'm only an hour south of Ben. But I still have the mother from that he sent me in the hoop house as backup, and it is growing massive. In fact, if you want, I'll cut to that real quick right now. There it is. Can you figure out which one it is? Look at that. Now, I've had this for a few years. It's in a 5-gallon pot. And there's the tag, Ben's Golden Riverside. Beautiful fig. So look at how much growth we've gotten out of this thing. And you can see I've taken cuttings off of it every year, just kind of snipping it back, and every year it puts on bigger, more stronger growth. Now, he grafted this onto, he didn't remember the rootstock. I asked him, he said it might be Gillette, he wasn't sure. And so I've been taking cuttings. I want to get one going for out in the orchard because I don't want grafted trees out in the orchard. We'll see how that pans out. But the reason is I want every single tree to be growing on its own roots out there, and if it doesn't belong out there, in my opinion. The reason is I don't ever, I'm such a stickler about knowing the varieties I have, and maybe that's to a fault, but I'm such a stickler about it that I don't want any possibility that a graft could send up some other growth, the top of the plant I want dies back, and then I've got this plant that I don't really know what it is. It's just a rootstock. And so that's why I'm making sure, that's why I haven't planted out this Bordesat Negra Ramada yet, because it was grafted. And I don't want that in the ground. So I'm waiting until, and it's not doing anything right now. I was hoping it'd start putting on growth, but it's probably because of that fig. But once this gets big enough to take cuttings, then I will take a cutting, and I know a lot of you will say, well, it won't grow well on its own roots. We're going to find out. A lot of people say a lot of things. We'll see what happens over time. All right, so we're back out here, and this was our Ben's Golden Riverside right here. Remember, just that little guy down in his little hole. Let's move right along. So we've got Colonel Littman's Black Cross. Now, I've gotten a little bit of a buying frenzy. This, let me get the shade here on the plant. A little buying frenzy over the spring, and I couldn't help myself. I was reading about all these varieties, and I was only buying varieties that I was really interested in. And some of them may do well in this area, some may not, I don't know, but just varieties that were unique and different and neat and had cool stories behind them, and this was one of them. I don't know how I arrived at that in my mind, but I did, and so there it is, Colonel Littman's Black Cross. I'm excited to see this one grow. It was probably just rooted last spring or late winter, but it's already getting good roots set down in there. You can see the top growth. I think it's going to be fine. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it pans out. If it doesn't make it through the winter, you know what, I'm going to be out there on the chopping block again bidding on figs. We'll see. So let's keep moving. We've got Calderona, and I've had this one for a while. I also bought this one directly from Keith several years ago. Geez, I probably had this one for like 4 years too, 3 or 4 years, something like that. And this one, of all of my fig varieties, or actually, I shouldn't say all my fig varieties, this one and the Maltese Beauty suck up the water like there's no end in sight, like the earth is running out of water. And you can see the results of having it in a pot. And my Maltese Beauty always did this too, because I couldn't keep constant water to them. But since getting it in the ground, look at this. I don't water these things every day anymore. Sometimes I go a week, sometimes I water every other day, it just depends. But that ground holds so much moisture after watering them. There's just so much more forgiveness in the ground, and that's what I love. But this one, the first year I had it, actually ripened. And I posted pictures on Facebook about it a few years ago, but it actually ripened a Calderona. Dark, like dark purple fig that it was just absolutely beautiful, and I'm so glad I have this variety. But it's recovering, it's doing well here. It didn't like the pot at all. Like I said, this and the Maltese Beauty just didn't like the pot. But now that they're out here, they're growing well. I'm glad I've kept it. I'm glad I'm gonna keep moving on with it. Let's move right along. All right, this one is, a lot of you will know this when you see it, just based on all the figs on it. This one is doing real well, is what this one is. So let me look at my Improved Celeste. There we go. So this guy, you know, people are kind of like, are the figs that spectacular? Maybe not, who knows? But I haven't actually had these figs at all myself personally, but it's such a good performer here that I had to have it, and I had to have it growing in the ground. But you can see, kind of like that Hollier back there, look at how well this one's growing. All the figs, every branch got tons of figs. The green growth is beautiful. Lots of nice, beautiful green leaves. But Improved Celeste. Move down to the next row. This one I picked up a bunch of years ago. This was also in a 7-gallon pot. This was one of the first years I got into figs. This one I picked, and I'm glad I did. This one is the one that I picked up based on Ben B's recommendation for our area. It's Tacoma Violet, and you can see, since I've got it in the ground, tons of figs. I never got all these figs when they were in pots. Never got all these figs, and a lot of it was neglect on my part, but I am reinvigorated in the fig game now that I've got these in the ground, because they're so much easier to care for. Oh my gosh, so much easier. It's absolutely insane. But there it is, Tacoma Violet. Looking forward to that one producing. We'll see how it goes. Now, this is one of those figs that I almost completely got rid of because it was small, it wasn't growing much, it wasn't really doing much of anything in a pot. It didn't look good, and I've heard good and bad about it, but you know, in the end I ended up deciding to save it and plant it out, and look at this thing. Boy, am I glad I did. This is one of those figs I was talking about where I am so glad I kept it, because putting it in the ground changed the whole game. And you can see, look at all of this new growth right here. All that new growth, all the branches have tons of new growth, and we're getting figs all the way down in there. And I almost trashed this one only because I didn't have the knowledge yet. I didn't understand it yet. You know, I've been in this fig thing now for 5 years, and that's not enough. The more I learn about these things, the more I realize you need like 20 years in the game to just start understanding them. And I'm so glad I didn't get rid of it. But this one is called Bourgeois Grease, and there it is. I'm excited about this one now more than ever, seeing how it bounced back after getting it in the ground and how vigorous it is. And I'm going to show you another one down here like this that I almost dumped. I was so convinced it was going down the drain, and I kept it. This isn't one of them. This one I've decided to keep. I don't know why. My heart is in this one. This is Maltese Beauty, and kind of like the Calderona over there with the droopy leaves, the old droopy leaves. The new ones look good. Kind of like the Calderona. This Maltese Beauty was the same way. Constantly needed moisture. I couldn't keep it watered enough. Since getting it in the ground, nice, beautiful, healthy canopy up on top, and we're already getting figs. I'm telling you, in the ground is the way to go. Here's one that I knew I was going to keep. This was also sent to me by Steve on the other side of the Cascades, and he sent this to me as a cutting years ago, and I rooted it. I've had a fig off of it. Absolutely wonderful fig. It's Stella. I think it's just a staple in the fig world as much as I've read about them, but really good fig. One that grows well in a lot of different areas, a must-have. So there it is, Stella. It'll be reliable over the years, I'm sure. All right, let's see, what do we got here? I almost don't even remember every single one of them. Sawadi, how could I forget that one? So this one I almost let go of too, and I still don't know what to think of it, but I haven't seen it fully grow out and ripen. It's not doing super spectacular, but the new growth is doing awesome. This one is another one where I had to cut the branch off because it was dying back on this side. I don't know why. As soon as I planted it, this side started dying back, and I thought the whole plant was going, but then all this started happening. So over time I'm getting more and more interested in this variety. You can see some of the figs starting to shoot off there. We'll see what happens. There's a few people that say this is one of their better figs, so I'm excited to see this one perform and actually find out what it's going to do here in Zone 8B, Western Washington. And then we've got our Chicago Hardy. Why? Because everybody has a Chicago Hardy. There's Henry. So this one I just wanted to plant because I know it's such a common fig and everybody has them, but it's supposed to be a real good performer and fruit real well, and it can die back to the ground and grow back and produce figs on the plant every year. So first year in the ground, not expecting too much, but there it is, Chicago Hardy. Let's move on down here. We're skipping this spot because the ground, if you watch that video where we created this whole area, the ground slopes down there and it's on a corner, and I want to be able to get my tractor around there. So this is one of those like the Bourgeois Grease that I almost completely just dumped. I almost got rid of it. I'm getting the, actually, yeah, I think you guys can see that okay. I almost dumped this one. It wasn't growing well in a pot at all. It looked like it almost died back a couple times, but since, see, I still got that metal tag down in there too. It's upside down, de tres splits. This one, but then when I started reading the stories about it and how it can produce 3 crops of figs, not this year of course, but look at that. I had to have it. I had to keep it. I started reading more and more about people saying this is a really good fig. You should definitely get this one in your arsenal. And when I started reading those things about it, I thought I got to get it. And then the other thing that sold me was it wasn't doing good in the pot. You can see all that old growth down there. All this is new growth now. All of that. Let's get it from the sunny side. Let's see. I'll get out of the, whoop, get my little hay bale back over there. All right. Henry's singing. So look at all this growth, guys. Once I got it in the ground, this thing just started taking off. It's absolutely amazing. I'm so glad I kept this one. De Tres Esplets. We'll see how it performs over the years. And I had to have this one because this is one that every Washington fig grower has to have, because it seems like every forum you read and everybody you talk to, this is the best performing fig in our region, and that is Desert King. And so, I mean, I don't know if there's a whole lot to say about that one, but there it is, Desert King. Of course, there's no brabas this year. I had pruned it back, and it's first year in the ground. We got to wait for that new growth to happen, and then there should be brabas on it next year. Although, to help these things get established, I've thought about cutting them all back, all the way down to the surface of that hay the first year. We'll see what happens if I decide to do that. And then we've got Ponte Tresa, another one I almost got rid of. Wasn't doing too well until I started reading the story behind it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep it and give it a shot. Planted it in the ground, doing real well. Excited to see this one perform and get some figs off of it. We'll see what happens. And last but not least, we've got Latarula, and that's another one you got to have in the Western Washington area. It's supposed to be a really good performer. It's in a little bit more shade, and that's okay. You know, right now it's, what time is it, 9:30 in the morning. Once the sun gets up past that tree, we've got nothing but sun all the way through the rest of the day. So this one gets plenty of sun as the day goes on. So what was that last thing I was going to tell you guys? Well, as I'm talking, there's actually 2 things. I forgot one of them. Spacing. Am I happy with the spacing? Well, these guys are 15 foot and then 15 foot this way. So the rows are 15 foot and they're planted 15 foot on center. So I've got them spaced pretty far apart. And I know some people go 20 or 25 foot, but for the space I had and the number of figs I had, this worked out really well. Am I happy with the spacing? Right now, I absolutely love it. I love being able to mow around all these real easy. I love being able to walk through them all. And I love imagining, see, I see all this in my mind 20 years from now. I love imagining big, healthy, beautiful trees with plenty of space to walk around them. And I'll keep them pruned back, you know, so I can get around them and all that good stuff. In the meantime, could I plant more figs? I've thought about it. I don't know if I want to upset this little apple cart though. But yes, I could come every 7.5 foot and plant a fig in between each row and end up with darn near 100 varieties before it's over, if you include the other side over here. I think I intend on knocking that maple down there and that tree over there, and then putting a whole nother row on the other side of these. That would expand it even further, and I've thought about expanding the figs that way more towards the pond after it gets built. So I like the spacing. I'm glad I did it. I did it because I did it this way. My wife and I talked and we thought, yeah, I'll prune them while I'm younger, but as they get bigger and I get older and I'm 70 years old, I may not want to deal with it anymore. And then if I keep the underside of them pruned a little bit here and there, I'll be able to let them grow up and create this beautiful canopy that will cover this entire field and just walk in the shade under all the fig trees. And who cares what happens when you're 70, right? Or 80, we'll find out. I don't know. Maybe I'll always want to prune these things back. I don't know, but just trying to think ahead for the next, what is that, 30, 40 years? And the last final thing that we haven't talked about yet, that is the actual best part about this whole thing, that I am probably the most excited of all of it, that will hopefully help answer some questions for you guys. You're going to see this in video. It's absolute proof of what I'm about to say right now. Absolute proof. You cannot discount this proof because it's right before your eyes. It's right in front of you, and I know I'm building this up right now. These things are dear
proof, at least so far. I'm pretty excited about that. That was one of my biggest concerns planting them out here, because it's not fenced like our other orchard area over here. And so I didn't know what the deer were going to do. And I took a chance. And here we are. You did not, as I walked through here, you did not see one bite off of one fig leaf. And I've got deer walking through here non-flipping stop. I see deer out here every single day walking through these woods and walking through this little pasture. And I've actually seen signs of nibbling the weeds and grass in between the figs. I've never seen a single leaf nibbled on. Now, I don't know what that's going to mean when the figs ripen. Will they go after the ripe figs? Who knows? But the trees are spared and they're in great condition. That was so exciting.
Well, that's it, guys. That's all I've got for you on this little fig orchard update. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it kind of answered all the questions that you wanted answered. It's really exciting to me. It's starting to turn out beautiful. They're putting on new growth. I can't wait for coming years to see how much growth they put on, see all the figs they produce, see what ripens in this area, and all the little intricacies that we've got out there, like the 2 col de dame grease. I mean, this is turning into quite a drama, isn't it? All right, that's all I got for you guys for right now. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to follow along. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.